Good afternoon. We'll get started in a few seconds.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, Miss Loving. How are you?
Good afternoon.
I'm fine.
You remember me?
Let me see. I'm looking at the face. I just see somebody in green. Is that you?
It's me. It's Kiva from Central High School.
Hi, Kiva Mala. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're going to get started in a few.
Okay, well, me and I think two or three more of our board are coming on for the Children's Museum, so we'll be well represented.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Just waiting for a few other people that I knew said that they were coming. So just give us a few minutes and then we'll get started.
No problem. I'm actually, I pulled over on the bypass lookout. It is so beautiful. I just, I just couldn't be behind a laptop today. The sky is clear.
Yeah, it is a
The
beautiful day.
water is blue. I can see St. Thomas and St. John in Puerto Rico, or the Vieques. It's just really clear. I know it's the Christmas winds are coming in. This is great. Well, you know, I'm still with education too. Happy birthday, Frandell. I know it's a few days late.
Thank you. Who's that?
Kemma,
Hey, thank you.
I hope you're still celebrating.
Oh, absolutely, every day.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. And we are gonna start right now. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Good afternoon again. My name is Kiva Muller, and I want to welcome you to the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery webinar on public services and facilities. That is a program under the DR grant. Okay, so with me, I'll be hosting, and with me is the Public Services and Facilities Program Manager, Selma De Costa. So today's objectives are, one, we're going to share details on the DR program and benefits to nonprofit organizations and any service organization under the Public Facilities and Services Program. We're also going to explain what types of projects can be funded under CDBG-DR, and we will let you know how to apply for those funds. So now we're going to talk about the benefits to the nonprofit organizations and CDBG-DR. So under the DR program, we have 4 tranches. Tranche 1 and Tranche 2, we already have access to. Tranche 3 is mitigation. I'm sure some of you have heard about that already. And then Tranche 4, which has not been released to us yet, will be about the power grid. Mitigation, we're right now in the action plan phase to send off to HUD. So we do not have access to Tranche 3 and Tranche 4 funds. But this $37.5 million is out of Tranche 1 and 2, and it's been earmarked to fund projects in public services and facilities. I would also like to add that we recently got approved from HUD, which is the Department of Housing and Urban Development, U.S. Department. That's our funding agency. So the CDBG funds come from HUD. And we recently got approved for our Amendment 2, which is amending the action plan, the initial action plan under the DR program. And what we have done, a major change that we have done in the Amendment 2 is we pulled out public services and facilities out of the housing program area. Initially, it was called Supportive Housing and Sheltering Program under housing, but we decided to pull that completely out and make it its own category for funds. And that's where this 37 million will be earmarked for. So CDBG-DR overview. And a lot of you are familiar with our DR funds, but I wanted to tailor it to this public services and facilities program. So of course, Hurricane Maria and Irma significantly impacted the housing stock that accommodates our most vulnerable populations in the VI. And those include, but are not limited to, the elderly, the mentally ill, disabled, homeless, those who are at risk for homelessness, individuals with substance abuse issues, and victims of domestic violence. So the lack of insurance and being underinsured left several providers without the resources to repair their facilities, and it hampered their ability to provide services. And one key takeaway in our action plan under public services and facilities, and then I'll read this, is that in order to address the emergency housing needs of the population, existing facilities must be brought back to pre-storm conditions and the resilience of those facilities increased. There's also a need to expand facilities to accommodate more homeless individuals and to pursue permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, mental health services, and substance abuse services for the population. So what is a public facility? Because this program is twofold. We have funding for public facilities and public services. So what is a public facilities? Public facilities are defined as buildings owned by the Virgin Islands government, nonprofit organizations, or agencies that are open to the public or serve persons with special needs. So examples of these include our public libraries, any of the recreational facilities, parks, playgrounds, homeless or domestic violence shelters, nursing homes, health clinics. So an example of a public facility owned by the VI government would be, say, the Herbert Gregg home for the aged, the elderly, our public library that we see here, others, nonprofit agencies, Catholic charities. So those are public facilities, and that will be eligible for funding under DR. And I'm gonna let Selma take over so she can talk a little bit more of public services and take you through the process, application process, and eligibility requirements. Selma?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so defining a public service. Public services are activities undertaken to provide employment training, childcare, health services, substance abuse, treatment and counseling, educational programs, fair housing counseling service for senior citizens and others. So an example of a public service will be like the Women's Coalition, Boys and Girls Club, and some churches as well. Next slide. Benefits to nonprofit organizations. This funding is available to organizations that provide public facilities and services that aid in the health and well-being of our territory's most vulnerable population. If your nonprofit organization falls into any of those public service or public facility categories, you may apply for funding. The application period is open until all monies in the 37.5 million fund are assigned to subrecipients. Next slide. Section 2, what types of projects can be funded under CDBG-DR? Okay, so we have two of them. That's a public facility and public service. These services are impacted by the Hurricane 2017 Irma and Maria, and it can help to restore benefit for our community. And again, some examples are repair of public homeless, shelter and building of worship, and also to reestablish cancer program that provide virtual therapy sessions for mental health, wellness, and mindfulness. I just want to emphasize that these projects must be tied to Hurricanes Irma and Maria. Any of those or both of those? Next slide. One project that we have a subrecipient agreement for right now is the UVI multi-purpose complex project that we are funding for 5 million. And that is for a multi-complex and a shelter that will be used, it's a complex that will be used all year round for sports, meetings, and so forth. And when it's not being used at those things and there's a disaster, it will also be used as a shelter. So this is a huge complex. It's 72,800 square foot multi-purpose complex located at the UVI Albert Sheen campus on St. Croix. It is developed to FEMA safe room standards. It will accommodate up to 800 people. It has storage for emergency supplies, parking, and also office space. So I'm currently working with UVI on this project, and we are hoping to start in the near future with the construction. Next slide. Section 3, the application process of becoming a subrecipient of the CDBG-DR program. Okay, step 1 is the capacity assessment. You can visit our website at vihfa.gov, and it'll give you the list of things that you need to, or documents that you need to have in place in order for the capacity assessment to be done. Then next, you have the subrecipient agreement. That is the legal contract that will bind via HFA along with the organization to say, okay, well, we have a legal document, say we are ready to start something, a relationship, a working relationship. And the third one is the project application. I would recommend that you start the application ahead of time because it is lengthy and you have a lot of documents that needs to accompany the application, even though it's not approved until the subrecipient agreement is signed. You can start working on it as soon as you have all the information. Step 4 is the project implementation, and the 5th step is the closeout. So steps 1, 5, it speaks for itself. Okay. The next one is the capacity assessment. Again, when you visit our website, you will see the list, the checklist that things that documents that you will need to have in order for the capacity assessment to be done. And a site visit will be conducted to further assess the capacity of the prospective subrecipient to gauge the ability to manage proposed project using CDBG-DR funds. Special conditions may arise from this process to assist in the development of the subrecipient agreement. Subrecipient responsibilities. Okay, a subrecipient can be public, government entity, authority, organization, nonprofit organizations, community-based development organization. Subrecipients are responsible for carrying out program activities, meeting federal program requirements. Next slide. What is a subrecipient agreement? A sorry. The subrecipient agreement includes special conditions based on capacity assessment, includes cost-cutting requirements that must be adhered to based on activities, can be amended at any time. Project agreements are issued after disaster recovery application is approved, may include special conditions based on application review and capacity assessment. And the agreement can be amended at any time. Next slide. To download the application, you can visit our website and it's here on the screen. You can use your phones and you can take a picture and go straight to the application and you can fill it out online. Again, just a reminder of the stages to becoming a subrecipient. Step 1, capacity assessment. Step 2, recipient agreement. Step 3, project application. Step 4, project implementation. And step 5, closeout.
Right. I also like to add, Selma, that we didn't really go into detail on the project implementation, but that's pretty much the progress of your project. And via HFA, our DR staff is going to be with all of the subrecipients every step of the way of the project being done. So you will be seeing notices to proceed on if you need to send out an RFP to solicit services or vendors to help you with your project. Uh, just anything that is major and requires us to front funds or draw down funds, rather, you will need approval from via HFA. So it's not that you apply, you get your project application approved, and we just hand you the money and you do whatever you want with it. We have some strict federal guidelines to meet when it comes to HUD. And in the other slide, we did mention that one of the subrecipient responsibilities is to adhere to federal guidelines as well. And that is in that legal document. So we will be with you every step of the way because we have a compliance and monitoring team that is making sure that all of the funds are spent correctly and you guys are always adhering to HUD guidelines, as do we. And then closeout, of course, is when your project is done. We're going to go back to the subrecipient agreements and the application to make sure that everything was done by the book and everything, all the monies that were obligated to that program were spent and spent correctly. That will also include an audit to make sure that everything was done by the book, because we know that if we misuse any of the funds, the local government will have to pay it back. So that's a part of the closeout process. But if the implementation goes as smoothly as possible and how it should, closeout should be a breeze.
Thank you, Kipa.
So I'm going to talk to you about additional funding opportunities, and I wanted to include this. Sidebar, some of you guys have attended our mitigation town hall meetings, but we did this presentation because we already have access to disaster recovery funding. That is a 37,500,000, and the 37 million is for facilities, and the 500,000 is for services. So you can currently apply for those funds if you have a tie to the storm and you meet all of the eligibility guidelines. But I do understand there's a lot of nonprofit organizations or government-based service providers that may not necessarily have a tie to the 2017 storms. So I thought it would be beneficial to include mitigation, because in our mitigation funds, one of the major differences with DR is that one, disaster recovery is a reactive set of, it's a program that reacts to the hurricanes that we had. With mitigation, it is more proactive in nature, whereas we want to mitigate against future hazards, not limited to hurricanes. So under mitigation, it does not have to have a tie to the 2017 storms, but it does have to mitigate against any future hazard, to include, of course, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, flooding, any of those events that could potentially cause loss of life, property, or just way of life here in the territory. So I thought that this would be very interesting for you guys if you do not qualify for DR funds for your organization. Mitigation may be another avenue. Right now in mitigation, we are currently in the public comment period, whereas we drafted the plan. We have it published on our website. You can find it on that same DR website that you'll get your application for the project application. There's a mitigation tab that you can take a look at. And we proposed funding for different areas. And what we want you guys to do now is review the plan and let us know what you think about it. If there's activities that you would like to see funded under MIT, you can send them to mitigation@vihfa.gov. And just give us your feedback on what we propose. And I'll just let you know the HUD definition of mitigation is those activities that increase resilience to disasters and reduce or eliminate the long-term risk of loss of life, injury, damage to and loss of property, and suffering and hardship by lessening the impact of future disasters. And mitigation funds are brand new to the territory. You have probably heard of Hazard MIT, and that is a FEMA-funded program that is not new to the territory. But CDBG, under the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, they appropriated these funds after the big disasters in 2017. And that's because a lot of areas were hit in 2017, not just Puerto Rico, USVI, the Gulf Coast and the East Coast of the US had some storms, and they also got DR funds. But the federal government, Congress decided to, just start a mitigation program so that I guess they won't have to shell out a lot of money after every disaster. And this can give those states and territories some more funds to harden and make your infrastructure and different areas in your economy a lot more strong. So that is a definition of MIT. And these are the program areas that we have proposed under mitigation. And it's a total of, I don't know why I forgot to say this, but it's a total of $774 million. And this is actually tranche 3, if you were following from the beginning. We already have disaster recovery is tranche 1 and 2, mitigation is tranche 3. This is a 774 million. And we propose funding areas in housing, infrastructure and public facilities, economic resilience and revitalization, and public services, and planning and administration. Planning and admin is really implementing programs and hiring staff and making sure that we spend the money correctly. And planning is developing long-term plans, economic and I guess local plans to make sure that we are, I guess, ahead of the game in the near future. So this is an interesting takeaway for you guys, and I'm gonna go through it as quickly or as best as possible because this is not a MIT presentation. But I just thought that you guys would be interested in seeing what type of funds that you may be qualified for under mitigation. So I would assume that under infrastructure and public facilities that you could be eligible for funding under community resilience and public facilities. And that would be a direct relation to public facilities and services program. Also, some nonprofit organizations are considered small businesses. So under economic resilience and revitalization, you may be eligible for funding under small business MIT. Under housing, for sure, if you provide homeless services, we have a line item for $23.5 million for the homeless housing initiative. And then public services, that's self-explanatory from the DR. And public services. So right now, we are waiting for the public comment period to be done. Once that is done, we will incorporate the comments and the feedback into the plan and send it to HUD by January 4th. That is the deadline. And once that is done, HUD has 45 days to respond to us and approve the plan or let us know what changes need to be made. And then we will have a grant agreement that the governor will have to sign along with the director. And that will grant us access to the mitigation funds. And once that is done, we will start implementing policies and procedures for each of these activity categories. So it's not going to be next month, it's not going to be in February, but this is just an idea of the type of funding that we will be having access to if in case you are not eligible for DR funds because you may not have the tie to the disaster. But this gives you a sense of hope if you're not eligible under DR that there may be some funds under MIT that you'll be eligible for. There's a lot of activity going on in my background. I apologize, guys. So this is a brief video that I'm going to show about how to access the application on our website. All right, so this is just Selma's contact information. She is the Public Services and Facilities Manager here under the DR program. She's located in St. Croix, as am I, but it is that we work on behalf of both districts. Her number is there and also her email. At this time, we'll take some question and answers. Well, we'll take some questions. And if you need me to explain anything further, now is the time. You can use the chat room to state your questions and or you can unmute yourselves and ask. So now is the time.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Risa Richards. And what did you say was the, hello?
I'm here. I'm listening.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Um, I wanted to know what's the deadline for the comment period, and you said that the plan is already there. If we have a specific interest, is this the appropriate time for us to insert those areas of interest? How is the comment content or the process handled, please?
And you are talking about for mitigation funds?
Yes, mitigation funds, yes.
Yes. So we are in the public comment period right now up until December 22nd. And if there's any program, I mean, let me not say program, any activity or project that you are proposing for funds, you can draft up an email and send it to mitigation at vihfa.gov, and that will be incorporated into our plan. If it's something that will already be addressed under the plan, we will let you know. um, like say for instance, you want to open a homeless shelter, and you put that in an email and you send it to us. We won't necessarily put that actual project in the plan because we already have a line item for homeless services.
Yes,
So that when the plan is approved and we get access to it,
yeah.
we'll be going back out to the public when the plan is approved, but we will be opening an application process for those funds, similar to DR, where you submit your capacity assessment, and we do the subrecipient agreement and execute a project application. It will be more or less the same with mitigation funds. The only big difference with MIT is just the eligibility requirements, and that it doesn't have to have a tie to the storm. Also, DR funds should have not should they have an expenditure deadline of 6 years. Mitigation is 12 years, and it does not have to have mitigate only against hurricanes. So
Okay.
if you already have an idea that you know, or you have a strong feeling that will be eligible under one of the program areas that I listed here, I'll go back to those.
Mhm. Okay.
One of these program areas,
Yeah.
you could also always we welcome the feedback. But if you know that your project could definitely be funded under the homeless housing initiative, you could send it in. But also, you'll just have to wait until this plan is approved by HUD, and we start
Mhm.
taking applications for subrecipients to get your projects going.
Okay, let me quickly ask you, and thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. Under planning, what does that entail? Does that entail, like, if, for example, if the University of the Virgin Islands or a nonprofit organization wanted to take up a project of protecting the shorelines, for example, because I know that they're quite prone. Would that fall under um, that umbrella program?
Planning.
Yes.
Okay, so let me start here. I'm gonna share my screen with the mitigation presentation just to give you an idea of what planning is. I don't
Okay,
want
good.
to hijack Selma's meeting,
Okay.
but just to give you a better idea, I didn't put all the information in here, but I'll share my screen now.
Mhm.
And we're gonna go down to what planning is. Okay. Can you see that slide?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So planning, that funding can support local and regional functional land use plans, master plans, historic preservation plans, comprehensive
Mhm.
plans, and community recovery, resilience, developmental building codes, zoning ordinances, neighborhood plans. That's what the planning funds are for.
Okay.
But you mentioned like a shoreline project.
Yeah, it would fall under the functional land use, that category there, because it would be
Okay.
what I was thinking, envisioning is like planting along the shorelines, whether it's the for the plants that they have, the trees that they have in the mangroves and things like that. That's what I was thinking more in line. So that would fall under there. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Kristen C asks, if we don't have an audit yet, can we still be eligible? I would say it doesn't hurt to try. I think that we do a good job at working with anyone that comes with any plans or are looking to apply, put in a subrecipient agreement and project application. And there are some special conditions that we mentioned earlier. And if there's something that we can take in place of an audit, don't quote me on this, but I don't want to say you're just ineligible because of an audit. So still reach out to our team and ask a question. That is not my specialty, so I can't give you a yes or no answer, but it wouldn't hurt to ask. Hope that helps, Kristen.
Good afternoon.
Sure.
This is Kelly Kirsch from the Children's Museum of St. Croix. We submitted a while back a concept paper with the idea of hopefully being able to apply for Tranche 3 funds. And I was wondering whether we need to submit something else, or will there be some sort of feedback as to whether or not we would be eligible for applying to the mitigation funds.
I'm trying to follow. You submitted what did you say you submitted?
We submitted a concept paper
Yes,
from
I remember.
of St. Croix. And so do we need to submit anything else to find out whether or not we could be eligible to apply for the Tranche 3 funds, or do we need to submit other documents?
You can send that same concept paper to mitigation at via.hfa.gov and we'll review it. But it is important.
I
Go
believe
ahead.
I sent it to Ms. DaCosta.
Yes, I received that. And just to answer your question, when MIT comes around, there will be a separate application for MIT. So for MIT, so you can save the information that you have, and when the time comes around for the application for MIT, you can fill it out.
Okay. Should I send it to the public comments that you mentioned that?
That would help as well. The more
Yeah.
record we have of it, I think that'll help. your
Okay.
case.
I'm just looking for advice of how to move forward, so thank you.
You're welcome. Monique
One
asks,
other question.
Sure.
Can you put both PowerPoints, one from today and one from December 3rd online, so we can have those to review? In case we
that
miss
is planned. Yes,
Okay, thank you so much.
you're welcome. Monique asked, can you apply for partial funding for a project? Is there a deadline to apply for MIT funds, and where's the application for MIT? I'll start from the bottom up. Mitigation funds are currently not available in the territory. There is no deadline to apply for MIT funds. Where we are right now is in the public comment period. So the steps for MIT, I'm gonna switch to this other presentation again. Where am I? Mitigation. The second guys. Okay, I'm having some trouble finding what I'm looking for, but I know how to explain it. So how the mitigation funds, because it is a separate program, it requires its own action plan. So what we have done, we hired a company to draft the action plan over the summer. In June, July, and August, we had some town hall discussions about what the community thinks that we should prioritize under mitigation. and we came up with a number of things, and then the company went back and wrote the plan. So it's published on our website now. So before we send it to HUD, HUD wants to know that we have gone back out to the public to get their input on what we proposed in the plan. So this is where we are right now. Up until December 22nd, you guys can review the plan. It's on our website, also with a presentation that synthesizes the 200-page document. So it gives you a better idea of what these project program areas are and how we plan to spend the money. And when the public comment period is over, what we will do is we will wrap up all of those comments into the plan in a document and send it to HUD. Our deadline is January 4th. And once we submit it to HUD, HUD has 45 days to respond to us. If they are in support of our plan, they will approve it. If we have some changes to make, then we will make those changes and then get it back to them. And once the plan is approved, then HUD will have some certification documents to do, because it's $774 million, guys. And then the director of Housing Finance Authority and the governor will have to sign the grant agreement for mitigation, and that grants us access to those funds. So once we have all of that paperwork done, the program managers will then initiate, we will do a public campaign to let everyone know that we have access to the funds and that we will start accepting applications for subrecipient agreements, and then the project applications for what you intend to spend the money on. So we're really just a funding source. Aside from via HFA New Home Construction Program, most and all of this money is really going out through subrecipients. So you will apply to us, you'll propose your program, your activity, your project. You'll send that information to us. We'll do a capacity assessment, make sure that you have the internal controls to spend the money and spend it correctly. And then we will guide you through the process of getting your project off the ground. So we're really just your bank account. Once your subrecipient agreement is executed and your project application is accepted and approved, and we will just be the funding source. So we are really early in the stage, and I wanted to add mitigation at the end of the presentation because I understand that there are a lot of nonprofit organizations and even government-based entities that may not have been eligible for disaster recovery funds because their projects do not have a tie to the 2017 storms Irma and Maria. These don't have to have that. As long as you are mitigating against future hazards and you're providing one of the community lifelines, which includes, what are the community lifelines? Now I have to go look for that. It's a couple of them. Let me get that for you. I don't want to misquote myself. Excuse me?
Could feeding be one? Providing
feeding?
Yeah.
Yes. And it's under food, water, and shelter. That is the first community lifeline, but I'm going to pull it up right now, just to make sure that you guys get that information. Okay. So on our website, it does state that considerations of the potential impacts that mitigation activities may have on the 7 community lifelines it's a model established by FEMA, and HUD has adopted it, and it includes energy, food, water, and shelter, health and medical, safety and security, communication accessibility, hazardous materials, and transportation. So as long as you are mitigating against any future hazard that may impact one or more of those community lifelines, it is highly likely that your project will be accepted. And that information is on our disaster recovery website under mitigation. That landing page has all of the information that you need for MIT. But I also still want to caution you that we're still in the planning stages, and once we get the action plan to HUD and approved, then we'll start getting policies and procedures together to get applications in. I hope I answered that question. And can you apply for partial funding for a project? I don't see why not, because we have HFA have some projects that are partially funded by DR and partially funded by local funds. So I don't see why it would be different for any other subrecipient. Demetria Douglas asked, is there any way for organizations that provide disaster recovery services to be funded through DR? For example, receiving funded for disaster care manager salaries, case manager salaries. I will have to table this question, Demetria, only because salaries are one of those funding items that I don't think that it's eligible because the set of funding that we have, regular CDBG, that's a community development block grant, that's an annual allocation that via HFA gets. CDBG-DR and MIT, it's a one-time set of funding. Of course, we have 6 and 12 years respectively to spend those funds, but all subrecipients and projects that we fund have to show that they can maintain, they can be sustainable after the life of the grant ends. And then if you can't sustain your salaries, then that would be an issue as well. But I will actually make sure that question gets to our DR director so that she can give you the full answer to that. She is more trained. She's a person that should be answering that question. So I'll get back to you on that, Demetria. Please drop your email so I can respond back. Reese Richards asks, would all nonprofits have to be 5013C? I do not think so. No, as long as your application, because not all, I say no, because it's not only for nonprofit organizations. Government agencies can apply for funding. Developers can apply for funding. As long as you, and under small business businesses. So even if your nonprofit is still considered a small business, you can be eligible for funding. Thank you, Demetria. Any other questions? If you have a question, feel free to ask.
Yeah.
I do.
Hi, good day. This is Chris Finch. If a project requests construction funding, how important in the application judging will it be that does it need to demonstrate that it already has the operational funding in hand?
I missed the first part of your question.
So let's say a project is asking for construction funding to provide whatever kind of activity or service. As you judge that application, will your judgment be based on whether or not that entity can prove it has the operating funding to operate once it's finished building?
Selma, you wanted to take that?
Yes, you need to show that you do have the funding to continue that operation. So once we go through the process, you have to show, okay, well, this is how we're going to generate the income to sustain the project. So you have to show. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And one other, so if a project receives construction funding, is there sort of a hidden mortgage or something that goes back so that, or a notice of federal interest, that if there is a default, the project reverts back to the federal government or the local government? How does that work? If a nonprofit receives construction money, unless they cannot follow through adequately?
Yes, well, it's money that we might have to pay back if the nonprofit cannot sustain it. So that is why we are so careful when we do give these monies, for these projects. And we go through, extensive research and the sub-recipient, not the sub, the capacity assessment to make sure that the organization can sustain. So if it falls through, then VIHFA will have to pay back those monies.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Monique asked, is education or workforce development part of the lifelines? No, they are not. The lifelines are energy, food, water, and shelter, health and medical, safety and security, communication, accessibility, hazardous materials, and transportation. However, under DR funds, we have earmarked some funds for workforce development, a part of the economic revitalization sector, and we have a subrecipient agreement with the Department of Labor to execute some workforce development programs. That includes education, more so on the job training side. Did I answer your question, Monique? And I'm also jotting down your emails so that when we have great news that the application, the action plan has been approved and we're getting ready to start accepting subrecipient applications, that you will be notified. What if you are not disaster connected? Then you won't be eligible, because under the mitigation funds, there is no line item for workforce development. However, that's the good thing about having the public comment period. If you can make a really good case for why workforce development under MITS can be a MIT program, feel free to send that in so that when we start looking at the comments and incorporating language or the feedback into the plan, that could be considered if it indeed aligns with HUD guidelines for what mitigation is. What types of, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, would that be the same thing true for education and children's resiliency? Because I don't see that, children's mental health resiliency and education for children. I don't see that under mitigation either, but if we did in the comments, we could make a case for that. That might be able to be included.
Possibly. Well, I'll say yes. Always make your case in your feedback and comments. That's what the plan is for. However, I do want to bring back up the HUD definition of mitigation. And some projects just won't be eligible based on HUD's definition and what the goals and objectives of MIT is. So those activities that increase resilience to disasters and reduce or eliminate the long-term risk of loss of life, injury, damage to and loss of property, and suffering and hardship by lessening the impact of future disasters.
Well, if we stretch it, it could be suffering and hardship. I mean, certainly children are impacted, but I don't see how, but I'll write something, I guess. Thank you.
Sure. And if you want to do some more research that will also help support your case, the Federal Register notice includes some key language on what they mean by definition. This is actually the legally or the public and official document that appropriates the funds from Congress into mitigation, and it tells you how to spend the money. So the MIT Federal Register Notice, which was published on August 30th, 2019, is also on our website under the mitigation tab.
So that language is there on your website?
Yes, the
Thank
register,
you.
the Federal Register Notice is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What types of projects fall under administration? Administration does not have projects per se, but it is, when you have a federal grant, you have to include money for the implementation of our programs and spending of funds. So that will include hiring staff and getting all of the tools necessary to spend the money appropriately. So it's not really projects. So like if I am under mitigation and I'm doing this presentation to you, like my salary would be funded under the administration line. But I'll go back to this slide here. Not this one, this one. All projects that would be coming from subrecipient agreements will be funded by either infrastructure and public facilities, economic resilience and revitalization, housing, public services, and planning. And admin is, it's always only 5% or a small percentage of the funds will have to go to admin just to make sure that we implement the programs or carry out the action plan as seamless as possible. So that's what administration means. Frandel asked, under DR, would economic recovery efforts by nonprofits be eligible? Under disaster recovery, yes. Selma, you want to add to that?
Yes, as long as it is tied to the storm, Irma Maria, yes, it is eligible. So you can apply.
All right, any other questions? It's 3:02 and I wanted to keep the presentation to just under or just at an hour. But I will be entertaining a few more questions and then hopefully by 3:15, I can let you guys go back to your days. I don't want to keep you too long.
Just wanted to say thank you. This is great information. I'm learning a lot with our new nonprofit. So I know it's kind of a silly question, but with the comments and ideas and suggestions for mitigation, is it limited to just our project, or can, like, I have so many ideas for the island, but I'm not going to do it all.
No, it's not limited to your particular project. If there's anything that you see in the action plan that sends off a light bulb and you have feedback or comments for it, you can definitely address those.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kiva.
And don't be shy. We really support your efforts and your ideas. We look forward to hearing them, so don't be shy.
Yes, thank you. Will do.
Still taking questions. It's 3:03, so I'll give it until 3:10 and then we'll wrap up. And actually, while I'm waiting on questions, I'm just gonna share my screen to our mitigation page. So this is our disaster recovery website, CDBG-DR.vihfa.gov. This is going to come down by today because that is last week's information from the town hall. But if you go right to the very top center of the page, mitigation funds, mitigation tab. The action plan draft is here. It's in English and it's in Spanish. It's about 200 and some pages. A press release on what MIT is, a presentation. It's not this exact one that I mirrored my screen to a few minutes ago, but that one will be uploaded as well. But this is an earlier presentation that has more information. So if you're not interested or you don't have enough time to read through the action plan draft, you can see the PowerPoint presentation for MIT. It's a lot. This is it right here. It has some more information in there about, we did a mitigation needs assessment. These are the hazards that we ranked that affect the territory. So you can see it's not only hurricanes, although that is ranked number 1. We have coastal flooding, riverine flooding, droughts, earthquake, rain-induced landslides, tsunami, wildfires. These are the lifelines. So this is a more informational presentation that you may be interested in. I'm gonna come out of this. This is the plan. As you can see, it's 241 pages, but it's good information. You can also take a survey. The survey includes information of what do you think should be priority areas based on those lifelines that we mentioned. So if you think our number 1 priority after a storm or a hazard or a disaster hits the island should be food, water, and shelter, or maybe it should be health and medical, just let us know how you rank those lifelines. This is an overview, what MIT is. I just mentioned the Virgin Islands notice, well, the Federal Register notice, and there's 2 of them. One that obligates the $774 million for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and one that obligates mitigation funds in total for the Department of Housing and U.S. And Urban Development. I apologize. Sorry guys, we just had company here. A little bit of mitigation activity requirements. Lifelines listed here again, public outreach meetings, and just presentations of the public hearings over the summer that I mentioned are also on there. And I will be including the presentation that we did last week, Thursday as well. So that is mitigation. Subrecipients. If you are eligible for funds under DR, you will get on this page and do, this is the application that we mentioned, the checklist and the capacity assessment documents. So you can also feel free to browse our website for all and any information relating to DR and mitigation. You can take a look at the current subrecipients that we do have. The University of the Virgin Islands is there for their $5 million for the multipurpose complex as well. So a lot of agencies have agreements with us, and we're funding a lot of projects, DR funding. Any more questions, guys? It is 3:08. I'm gonna give you guys Selma's contact information one last time. And I want to thank you guys for participating. We will more than likely do another one of these webinars early in the new year to capture any of the organizations that we may have missed. So I do ask that you guys send me your contact information, or if you have colleagues or anyone else that may benefit from the information about DR or mitigation funds, please. I'm compiling an email listing to get directly to you guys and kind of bypass the media. So please, if you'd like more information on these things, drop your emails in the chat room. Selma, do you have any closing words?
I would just like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Just be safe out there, and happy holidays to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye,
very much.
everyone.
Okay, bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.